Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. About to get started. In the room we have Jane Dubshe, the three commissioners, the chief clerk, Lisa Hagbert, Dan Glotz, Riley Enlow, and our newspaper representatives.
Very good.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, we'll call the work session of Tuesday, January 11th to order. The meeting being recorded, no public hearing or bids. This time I ask if there's any public comment.
And why did you turn to me?
You're the only public.
This is on behalf of the public. I can say little on behalf of the public. I first wanted to say, I think the last time I was here was when you met with Paul Pascuzzi and his team. And I appreciate the ongoing work on so many people's parts to deal with the EMS issues, especially you all in your leadership. My question today has to do with voting and voters. I think it's the Pennsylvania Senate has a committee that has been requesting records on voters. I don't know that they've approached every county, but I wanted to know if they have approached Warren County for submitting records.
One of the senators did call me several months ago and asked if we would be interested in participating voluntarily, and I politely asked to not participate.
Especially until we know more.
Right. Otherwise, I have heard nothing. I've not seen any letters from the Senate or subpoenas or anything like that. So, not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? All right. There's no hold items of discussion unless you want to consider the landfill closure and hold item discussion. This is good. So why don't we move on to that?
Does anybody want a copy? I have a few more copies. You don't have to. Because I mean, if you're having a hard time sleeping or, insomnia has gripped you, as it has my wife the past couple of days, perhaps this will help. So, I don't want to rehash too much of the stuff that we've already done, because I think everybody here is pretty well versed in the situation. So, this past end of the year, November, December, our environmental consultant, in conjunction with a contracting company that had been hired with the Solid Waste Authority, essentially shut down the Grunderville landfill, plugged the wells, got rid of any remnants of the old site, and cleaned it up. So the landfill site, physically speaking, is closed. With that closure, we're expecting a new permit from DEP that will be made temporarily with the redevelopment authority, that essentially just states that we intend to mow the cap on the landfill in perpetuity every other year, which is the last responsibility of anybody that's associated with that site per DEP regulations. So, and then once that permit is issued, DEP will issue the closure certification, essentially shutting down permanently the site. I know some might say, well, you still have to mow the cap, is it really shut down? The mowing of the cap is a covenant that is put on the property itself, so any property that has any type of lingering environmental issue would have something like that. But for all intents and purposes, the actual functioning or any type of function related to the landfill is closed or will be closed when that's issued. So once that closure happens, essentially the county is put in the position of trying to address A, the long-term mowing of the cap, B, the utilization of the closure fund, and the goal with this proposal is essentially to address both of those things and try to parlay it into something positive for the county. So what's being proposed here is essentially, and this is after talking with Attorney Schmidt, Dan Glotz, multiple other folks about different possibilities. We've researched this 16 Ways from Sunday, is the creation of a Recreation and Conservation Authority, which would essentially be a new authority that would replace the Solid Waste Authority, which is going to essentially be dissolved. The concept here is amazing, Solid Waste Authority dissolving.
Yeah, it does sound bad, doesn't it?
It's kind of a punny, isn't it? So the concept of creating the Recreation Conservation Authority essentially addresses a few things. So first things first is the long-term, management of the site itself. So at least the initial intention is for the Recreation and Conservation Authority to hold a permit for the Grundleville landfill with the ANF, depending upon what would be decided by them to address like ownership long-term, and then they would be responsible for paying for the mowing of the cap. The second piece of it would be the management of the funding along with the trying to maintain the current recycling programs that the county currently has. So it's hard to kind of explain this without lumping the two pieces together. So the landfill closure fund currently is about $480,000. That's obviously like a finite amount of money. The recycling programs currently cost in the neighborhood of $22,000 a year to operate 4 sites in Eldred Township, Elk, Cherry Grove, and Columbus. We get roughly $6,000 in revenue from the municipalities to offset that, and then the rest of it currently comes from the closure fund, aside from the other expenses associated with it. The idea, again, to kind of handle all of this is to roll the $480,000 into what would be an endowment with restrictions related to recreation and conservation, that then the board of the Recreation and Conservation Authority would have, autonomy over managing, going forward. And with the idea that initially the money would be utilized to maintain the recycling programs and any other programs that can be generated through that money. There's also the potential for fundraising to build up that fund in order to use it for other things, but at the very least, I feel pretty confident that this money will at least allow the recycling programs to continue. So that's like one, so that's just trying to maintain what we currently have utilizing this funding. If we don't do this, at the very least, like we would have to shut down all of the recycling centers and then, or they would use up the funds that are available until they just disappear. So, again, the alternative is to just take the money and shut the program down and then use it for something else. I wouldn't be in favor of that, but even if you're going to do it, I mean, $480,000 to any individual is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things and trying to like initiate programs and stuff, it's not a lot of money. So with this proposal, at least in perpetuity, it creates a fund that can then be utilized in order to address some of these issues. So then secondarily, the concept of a Recreation and Conservation Authority is kind of split between a couple of different goals. I give the example in this document of Cambria County that has a Recreation and Conservation Authority. They're not the only ones, but most of the bigger counties are split into 2 separate entities. But Cambria County was one that was comparable, that does the same thing, and they focus a lot on greenways, trails, stuff like that. So the other part to this is, the potential of hiring like a county recreation director, having this body that's created be able to do promotions, do stuff related to, for instance, like our bike hike trail, rather than Dan being 100% responsible for it. They would take an active interest in that. They would help, get grants, help raise money, help manage some of these assets that we have. When you're looking at the farm colony and the utilization of that space, having a group that would be a liaison for the Little League, stuff like that, this would formalize that. I also outlined in here the possibility of having a recreation director. This is tied to the circuit rider program for DCNR, which provides at least 100% of the salary for the first year of the position. It's a 4-year commitment, 75% the second year, 50% the third year, 25% the fourth year. I'm not saying that we would have to initiate this, but hypothetically, once the Recreation and Conservation Authority is created, we could work with the board of that authority in order to create that position and then get it funded, or find a funding stream that would sustain it long term. Even if it was this, and the difficult part of this is really, I don't know that there's a lot that you can, that I wanted to kind of shackle this with without creating it first, because I think there are a lot of different things you could do. Hypothetically, if you mixed Act 13 funds, maybe some bed tax money, a few other things you could pay for the whole position, and have a recreation director on a regular basis. It's important to note that the recreation director position is outlined in pretty much every plan we've done for 20 years. So it's, including the marketing strategy document that we came up with and others. So it's a need, everybody acknowledges that. This would be a method of addressing that. I'm not saying that it does initially, but it would set the stage for that. So I also want to just acknowledge openly that there's nothing in this that says that we have to keep the recycling program as is, okay? So if the board that's generated from this decides that, that just doesn't seem sustainable, or, we kind of, nudge them in that direction in order to utilize the funding in a different way, that would be understandable, I think. The goal is to keep the funding intact, and then utilize it for something positive, rather than having it get wasted just kind of taking care of the landfill. It's important to note that the other reason, from my perspective, to keep the money in an endowment or have it available is if there is an issue with the landfill, it can be utilized for that. Like you could, in the covenants related to the endowment, you can include documents that state that it could be dissolved if there was some type of remediation that needed to be done, or some type of legal challenge. Because I think it's important to keep that money intact for that purpose as well, long term, just in case. I know there's other stuff related to this. Does anybody have any questions? And I apologize, I guess I should preface this by saying I dumped this on everybody about 30 minutes ago, so I understand that nobody's, no, it was longer than that. I don't expect a decision on this today or anything like that. I'm just running over, this is, and there's a lot of things that still need to be ironed out. So for instance, I give this operating estimate for next year. There are multiple things in this that are not up to date. So it doesn't include grant funding from DEP, which we haven't figured out what that amount is. The insurance is going to have to change because currently they're insuring sites that we don't even operate. The recycling contract with Advanced Disposal expired 2 years ago, so it's a reason that they've been able to raise the rates every year without any kind of so it's very possible that the first act of this authority would be to rebid that contract and then actually probably change the parameters of the recycling program to save money.
Actually, was my first question. The current solid waste authority is the one that pays for the recycling program? Okay, and they have not been.
Well, it's split between the authority and the municipality host.
Oh, I didn't do this, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure it was.
But it's a net cost to the county.
It is.
And then the other municipalities, I'm assuming, did have some type of recycling program before, and these are the only ones left?
Yeah, what was happening is people were dumping their household trash in. It was single source. People were dumping household trash in there. The road crew employees of the municipalities had to go out and fish that stuff out. If the load got contaminated, it couldn't go to the recycling, it had to go directly to the landfill. With the trash being pulled out of there, it was taking time and money from the municipalities for that extra task. And the municipalities just thought, well, you know what, we've had enough. We can't, this was supposed to be set up for recycling. We support recycling, but it's being abused, so they eliminated it.
So do we have any obligation at the county level to manage a recycling program?
The municipalities that are required by law are municipalities such as the city of Warren with populations of 5,000 or more.
Okay, because I'm just looking at these municipalities, they're not very highly
No, those are
populated
yeah.
municipalities.
Yeah, when we set up the centers back in the 1990s, we approached all of the municipalities. Several came on board, others chose not to do anything. So over the years, it's changed a little bit. We would pick up a municipality, drop a municipality, and then just recently we lost 3 major ones with Sheffield, Clayton, and Pleasant.
I guess I just was thinking about the program itself and, you know, maybe we think through, given the fact that advanced disposal is continuing to increase their fee without check, there's a very small percentage of the county that actually is doing recycling. Would it be fair, above and beyond just this proposal of saying, let's kind of reset the landscape for recycling and
I think it needs to be looked at, yeah, maybe a new
because-
strategy.
yeah, and change that strategy. And I know you had been talking about that and actually utilizing maybe this particular land for that, but I'm just thinking, even if, regardless of that, should we maybe do something different? That's my thought.
Well, I mean, I think that's the whole idea, you know, is that I think we all acknowledge that the way it's going, something needs to change.
Yes.
And so, so a couple of things. First of all, a huge, like, when you add the city in with their mandated recycling program, there's a great deal of recycling that's actually done in the county. These satellite sites are utilized by all the municipalities in the region. So in Eldred, for instance, like, you know, you have all the surrounding entities utilizing them. In TDU, they're not on this list because they have a self-sustaining recycling program. You know, all their surroundings, you know, and then Cherry Grove now, especially with Sheffield being shut down, people from Sheffield are going to Cherry Grove. And Elk, and the thing is that the response that we've gotten from the municipalities that have them has been overwhelmingly positive. Like, you know, Elk Township, for instance, which, you know, at times we'll have, you know, different kinds of conversations with, this is one program that they always share positive. You know, once they implemented this, the townsfolk were very appreciative of the program. And so that's why, from my perspective, I really want to keep what we have and try to expand on it down the line. The way that can be done hypothetically is, like I said, to rebid the contract, change the parameters of the contract. So maybe plastic isn't a focus in the recycling. So you focus on maybe cardboard and aluminum and the rest, and provide the most value in the recycling stream. And you reduce your costs overall, you know, because when this program was initially started, I mean, these costs were really ridiculously low, and it was because of the value that they're receiving for the material. You know, as things have changed in the recycling landscape, it's much more challenging to make money on recycling, and but that's even changing, where because of the closure of China and several other changes, you know, domestic reclamation of material has increased. So, you know, like one of the things that we look at with this is glass recycling. You know, we have a proposal from a company in Erie that's willing to work with us. The startup costs are around $6,000, but we'd be able to, especially if we can include all the bars and different organizations downtown, is reclaim a huge amount of glass recycling, which doesn't, you know, to the average person doesn't seem like a lot, like who cares, but when you start counting the number of cases that this county runs through, of beer at the bars, you get a mountain of glass that's all going to landfills that could easily be reutilized by companies in this region. So that's, like, this is just the start, like, it's not meant to be a fix, like, for the situation. Like, for my part, we created a task force and some of this other stuff, but really, that the scope of that is limited with an authority that where we can get 7 board members and they have a focus. It's gonna be a lot easier to have some other hands on the oars to try to like figure this thing out. Rather than me and Dan running around like crazy people all over Northwest Pennsylvania trying to like rob Peter to pay Paul, you know?
Well, I guess my only thought would be, I think if we do continue recycling, that it should be, you know, pretty much cost neutral to the county going forward. I am also, short of whether we have an authority or not, am in favor, and I think Dan, you and I have talked about a recreation director. I think for the county, for the city, coordination of events, understanding all of the wonderful things that are going on in the community, I think a recreation director, whether it's here or directly reporting to your department, I think is, and I'm very supportive of that as well. And I also want to learn a little bit more and would like to see what the Cambria County Conservation Recreation Authority does. That would be, this is, you know, very new to me anyways, but I'm sure you guys are much more familiar with how it works. So.
Yeah, you know, I think Jeff has done a good job of laying out some different options. Now it's time to take a look into those a little bit deeper. But, you know, he's right when it comes to the recreation side of things. And I'm going all the way back to the feasibility study that we did on the Warren Bike Night Trail for this to the New York line. And the recommendation there was an authority be created that could handle maintenance, fundraising, development of new trails, and those kinds of things, not only the North Warren one, but anywhere in the county. We get calls all the time from different municipalities. I think Youngsville is one of them that is looking to do some trail expansions too. I just had a conversation this morning with some folks over in Erie County in the Corey area that would like to partner with Warren County and get a trail going through, link up with them. They're trying to get onto that trail that goes from Erie to Pittsburgh. So there's some opportunities there. I think everybody on the recycling side of things appreciates that we should recycle. We teach it in the schools. It's the right thing to do. It's just that right now we keep running into roadblocks that maybe we can solve them, but we've got to, you know, start somewhere and investigate some different options.
And I think, you know, you'll see places in New York State that's privatized recycling, and you know, maybe that's an opportunity.
Maybe that's an option too.
You know,
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, the challenge is that there's gonna be a cost, I mean, one way or the other. And the thing is that technically speaking, these programs save the county money overall, even if we pay for them, because otherwise people are paying in there to dump the stuff, like, you know. And then, I mean, like as an example, like this landfill, like think the amount of time that's gonna be spent maintaining this thing over the course of its lifetime. Like and the cost associated with it, when a good chunk of the materials that's sitting in it right now could have been reutilized. Like, you know, I mean, it's really hard to quantify that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just don't know if it's our job or not. If we can get somebody else to have a good recycling program, I don't know that it's within our purview is my thought.
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I guess I would say that my position is that it's whatever we say it is. You know, I mean, technically.
There you go. Okay, well, those are just my initial comments, whether, you know, and I do think we should pursue a recreation director. But be interesting to see what Cambria County's done.
Yeah, so, well, just as like kind of the next steps then, the reason that even though this, I'm not gonna say this is half-baked, but it's not ready to come out of the oven yet, is that there's still things to iron out, but we kind of need to make a decision as to what we're gonna do with it, like, within the next month, because essentially we've got to disintegrate the solid waste authority.
Right.
You know,
Got it.
whatever the proper term would be, allow it to ride off into the sunset, let Bob Carlson go is
I like the dissolve word.
yeah,
Dissolve.
dissolve it and then do something with this. So if you don't mind, I mean, can we, like, either at the next work session in 2 weeks, or, you know, sit down and talk about this again, or like we'll produce more information in the meantime?
The decision point that needs to be made pretty immediately is the creation of a new Recreation and Conservation Authority, yes?
Yeah,
The details of whether someone works for them, where the money comes from, et cetera, whether it's in planning and zoning as a half, position or something like that,
Yep.
those decisions can be deferred. I
Right.
think we're all on board with the idea of doing the authority and moving forward with that, even if it's just a shell organization that doesn't end up doing a whole lot.
yeah,
Um,
which is what it may be initially.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, okay, well, and I guess that's what I'm trying to ask with this is, I don't wanna have Schmidt work on, like, cause we're gonna end up drafting an ordinance and all the other stuff. I don't wanna do that if you guys don't feel comfortable with at least that concept.
no, I feel comfortable with that first step,
Yeah,
but there's still hazy details as it pertains to how it's staffed and such in the future.
yeah,
Everybody understands why we have to continue to mow that. Okay.
Yeah, and if that organization would be the appropriate way to do it, great. No problem with that. Quick budget question. I know for years now, we have talked about funding the assistant planning position in your office. And I know we talked about it again at the budget hearings last fall. Did we move on that? I forget.
We put some room in there for it, but we didn't have a actual number, we didn't know what it was gonna look like, so there's,
And I think we have to determine exactly what the roles and responsibility of that position would be.
Well, obviously.
Tossed around different ideas.
Right. But I mean, I think a component of it would be the recreation
Exactly.
planning and possibly grants outside of the organization. So anyway, I was just trying to ascertain whether or not we had in fact budgeted something for that, because that could be used sort of as a, I call it a match, but, you know, if you've got a deficit, and you do.
yeah, no, I mean, I feel pretty confident that once this other stuff is figured out, that'll, you know, that all that'll work out.
So for your immediate, certainly I would say, should work together on
Okay.
getting the authority set up.
Okay, so we'll do that for the next work session and try to have something for everybody to look at and deliver. And the other thing is I'm trying to get information back from Northwest and a few others on the concept of the endowment and what it would look like, so that that's a little bit clearer to everybody, like how that would function.
It's currently with Northwest.
Is it with Key Bank?
You're right.
Oh, Erie Bank.
Okay.
Would we want to create an endowment for that?
Well, if we're gonna invest it, like, and it's gonna have like some type of requirements on it. Like, I mean, otherwise, you could do whatever you want with it.
Is it possible to put it in with our existing PNC accounts?
That's what I kinda mean, the way I looked at it was, okay, let's turn it into an endowment, and then you can just put some covenants on it related to, okay, if you're gonna, you know, if something happens with the site, it has to be used like this. If you're gonna use it for, recreation or conservation, the X, Y, and Z. My point being is the three of us may not be here in a couple of years. Like, what if somebody else comes in and they go, you know what, I wanna use the money to build, whatever,
Well, I mean, I would think we could use a restricted vehicle from a cash perspective and not need to do an endowment. And that was more what I was thinking of, definitely have it restricted for it based on its use, but maybe we would restrict it instead of having something that is put somewhere that will have permanent restrictions on it. Because I just have dealt with endowments before, and there are situations that come in the future where it's not really needed any longer, but you're stuck going to court and trying to find a way to release the funds for a different purpose. That's all I was thinking about.
well, I mean, we can make it as restrictive as we want to. Like, my thing is I don't care as long as it can be invested and there's revenue
Okay.
generated from it.
Yep.
I mean, you give me a structure that says that, then fine.
Okay.
I just didn't want the money wasted.
Right, I totally agree with that, and it does need to sit out there and manage this
I'm just a
property.
simple commissioner. I'm just trying to.
I know. Are you gonna put that in the paper? Don't put that in the paper.
He's put worse than that. That's fine. I can take that. Actually, I would probably appreciate it because I'm using myself to read that.
Anything else related to the landfill closure?
No, I appreciate your consideration with this and the leeway that you've given.
The 4 existing sites, since it's part municipal money, it's part county money, are they open to anybody in the county?
Yes. Yep.
Because I was under the impression that was not the case, and you don't look
Well,
certain.
Technically, probably not, would be my guess.
I think that's the best way to sum it up. Because the municipalities that they're housed in are the ones that are footing the additional cost, the match for this program. And, you know, I know that like with Glade, when they had it, they never balked at other folks coming from other areas to utilize it. But I don't know if that's the same philosophy or belief by the other municipalities.
I don't want to misrepresent.
Well, no, but technically speaking, the municipality's opinion that it's their site is not accurate. It's mostly funded by the county. Like, they put money in because their citizenry benefits from it greater than the surrounding citizens, but they're the county sites, like at the end of the day.
There was a time when it was 50-50.
Yeah, I guess that's my
Those
problem
people-
with it. If they want it, I'm not so sure why we should be subsidizing if we're not subsidizing all of it. Which I don't want to do that either. But do maybe find a plan for a different recycling program that would benefit the county.
I know if we put it out for bid, maybe we'll end up with a service that is significantly cheaper than what the county's paying right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think, though, that it has to be understood that there's a cost to recycling. I mean, there just is. You know, like, I mean, in the same way that there's a cost to run a sheriff's department or the courts or any other services provided by the county.
My only question is it our job or role? That's my thing.
The answer is it can be.
I know that. And if it can't be, then it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, is
Well, yeah, the better answer is, it depends.
it depends.
I love that.
All right, on to COVID testing.
So I didn't send a proposal, mostly because just been talking with Ken McCorson and several other folks and kicking ideas around. So a couple of things. Fundamentally, with the increase with the obvious increases in COVID statewide, the clinic for the hospital and several other locations have been slammed with people seeking COVID testing. We've been requested on a couple different occasions to assist with testing to alleviate that strain on the medical system. On top of it, you have a lot of people that are congregating in a closed space in order to get tested, you know, and you really don't want that to happen. After talking with Gon's Drugstore and Darling's Pharmacy, and then also having, like I said, conversation with Kim McCorson, there's a couple of options we could do if we wanted to offset that, or try to create other channels for testing options. So the first thing, basically I'll just run down the options, I guess. So the first one is to essentially just advertise or promote the other options, which would be similar to what we did with AMI when AMI was functioning in North Warren, but promote, Darling's, promote Gon's, and anybody else that has a testing site other than the hospital in order to try to push people to get into those channels for getting tested. Gon's has a test that takes, somewhere between 30 and 48 hours to get a result, but it's very accurate. Chris Darling has a 15-minute quick test that you can take, but it costs $50, and it's not accurate unless you essentially have symptoms. But the idea would be to promote those two options. Could allocate ARPA funding to it. You know, I would say my suggestion would be $5,000 to $10,000 in order to, you know, in that range to promote testing. I would use the vaccine promotional money for it, but unfortunately the regulations state explicitly you can't promote testing with it. Like you have to promote vaccination. So, yeah. So then, second option is to, that we discussed was the possibility of subsidizing Darling's testing system in order to reduce that cost, that $50 cost for a test, you know, to get the cost down to somewhere in the neighborhood of like $10 or what would be a copay. The other option that we discussed was the possibility of buying home tests from GONS at about $15 a pop, and then having a location to distribute the home tests. Both of those would be, in my opinion, ARPA eligible, you know, especially with the change in the regulations. I'm hesitant to, and this is the reason why I didn't really put a written proposal together. It's hard to know what the best way to address this is, you know, based on all of that. I think at the very least, in the short term, relatively quickly, we could promote the testing options that are available that I think that are comparable to what was offered at AMI, because Ken had talked about the potential of bringing AMI back, having them function in North Warren, and my view was, why would we promote that when we have a similar option locally available here now? The thing is we've got to get people away from the clinics to get tested, because it's creating havoc on that system. So I guess that's what I'm asking is what is the appetite for promoting testing or doing something else? If there's very little, then, you know, then that's that.
I guess the first question is, why would this be our scope of work? I think the answer is that from an emergency management standpoint, we're supposed to support critical infrastructure. The hospital was identified as one of those main things, and they have identified a need. And there's an obvious solution, which is people should be directed to either GONS or Darling's. That's why we got involved in the past and brought AMI in. So I guess I could be persuaded that we should do something. On the question of efficacy, I suppose, do we know that people are not going to Darling's because of the cost?
I think that nobody really knows the testing options that are available. I mean, I personally, until getting into this, and maybe this is my fault, I wasn't aware of like how GONS ran the test. So, and I certainly wasn't aware that Chris downtown had a quick test. And now granted, I work for the county, we have testing options here, but so I'm willing to bet that nobody, I mean, I would bet 98% of the people that are in trouble with COVID, probably their first thought is, I gotta go to the clinic to get a test. I mean, that, without even thinking about it. And my view of this is, when we had AMI, I remember they were running at like 6 or 10 tests a day, and they were getting ready to pull out, and when we did the promotion, it shot up to 60 almost overnight. So my assumption is that if we promote, you know, like GONS and Darling's as an option, that their numbers will increase, and then at the same time, the strain on the hospital will reduce. You know, they're at the point where they can do a max, I think, of 150 tests a day, and before they'll shut the thing down. They've almost broken that a couple of times in the past week and a half. So they're getting slammed, like with people seeking tests. Like, you know, my hope would be that if people thought that they had COVID, that they would just quarantine or whatever, but I hope a lot of things, and they just don't seem to pan out. So, in this case, the goal really, from my perspective, the fundamental goal is trying to alleviate the strain on the clinics. Like, I feel you know, in sympathy for the people working the clinics. I mean, I can't imagine sitting there with 150 people in a day or 110, you know, seeking tests out in that space, you know, bringing their kids and everybody else into it. You know, it just creates a huge strain.
I'm in favor of spending some money on promoting Darling and Gons, and letting the community know that there's testing available to the specific purpose of trying to reduce the walk-in clinic testing issue. And I guess, can we also promote, if you're asymptomatic or if you have mild symptoms, don't, you know, try not to go to the medical clinic, you know? Please use these other options because, you know, and also Tops has tests. I mean, I bought 2 antigen tests yesterday from there.
Well, and just to be clear, it's not my intention to show favoritism to Darlings or
No,
to
I understand.
Gons.
Sure.
All people that offer testing, we're going to try to do our best to promote them. It's just those are the 2 that we've had the most collaboration with to try to understand what the options are. And part of it, to your point, is to try to convey to people the difference between the PCR test and the quick test, because one of the challenges we have is because of the impatience for getting a result, people will go and get a quick test, not understanding that you should essentially have symptoms if you're going to do that, because you get a false negative and actually be contagious, you know. And whereas the test that Gons has really is the best one that we have available, where you know, they send it away and everything. It takes until the end of the next day for you to get a result, but it's very accurate. So, like if you're asymptomatic, that would be the test that you would want to get if you were going to get one. But that would be a part of the promotion, you know. And the thing is I don't expect this to, I mean, from my perspective, my hope is it wouldn't last that long. We would do it for a few weeks. I mean, this is going to be the peak problem period next month. And if we can take that strain away from the hospital and also give some people some good options, I think that would be a good thing.
Okay, anything else on COVID testing?
Jane, that question.
Is it okay for me to ask
Sure.
the question? The hospital clinic and Gons, I trust, charge for their testing, and insurance generally takes care of it. What happens to people without insurance that can't easily afford the testing? Do we have any subsidy program or outright grant for them to be tested?
Well, the way that they have it set up, and this is the unfortunate difference in the situation. The reason Chris has to charge $50 is because in order to get certified for that test, like or get authorized to bill the insurance for it, there's all this certification stuff that takes months and it's a huge investment. So that's why they have to pay up front for that test. In Gon's case, the system that they have that you go through, they have a whole other fund that's federally funded that would pay for someone's test if they have no insurance. So that's what I mean by there's no cost. Like if you have insurance, they'll bill the insurance. If you don't have insurance, there's like you have to prove that you don't, like through their automated system or whatever, but it's not hard to get the test funded. Like so.
Which also is something that would be beneficial for people to understand.
Yeah.
And not go to the hospital
Yeah.
clinic
Right.
where you pay or have insurance.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the downsides of how convenient the clinic is that when you have an emergency, I mean, everybody runs to it because,
It's a clinic.
because it's a clinic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
People who are sick go to clinics.
Yes.
Just that one people with COVID who are sick.
So it should be, I mean, and God's too has been very good about working with people if they call them up and say, I agree with you that hypothetically, the easiest way you can make it, the better, in order to encourage for people to get tested. But did that answer the question, or did that make sense?
And I like it that you're going to, it sounds like you're intending to stress the purpose of the various tests. That's a good piece of this.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else related to COVID testing? All right, let's skip policy and procedures and projects due to time. Upcoming commissioners meeting review. See before you, there's currently two things, a master services agreement amendment. We have higher revenue analytics, and through the Rouse in with us, they would like to not be separate, so simple addendum. The other would be the tax anticipation note.
I believe that's coming around already.
Yeah. Took that one at a time.
Yeah.
Well, I know, I'm like, wow.
In the first meeting, we were supposed to set the tax rate actually.
From our assessment. The PA7 agreement is on there.
Okay, so add PA7. I would check with assessments. We normally do that in the first or second meeting. Set the tax rate officially. And I'm not sure we'll be able to get it together by tomorrow, but I'd like to get on the agenda the EMS shared position resolution with Erie and Crawford counties. That's what we talked about last time.
And I included Nathaniel on that ticket so that he can review that.
Perfect. So even if we can't get that done by tomorrow, so I realize that, yeah, we'd love to, at least, let's get it on the agenda, at minimum we can discuss it, and defer it to the next meeting. Anything else that needs to go on the agenda for Wednesday? All right.
I don't know why I feel like there's something missing.
I know, there, it
It
does
seems so light, doesn't it? It's like this.
Well, I mean, there's a reorganizational meeting where we turn Tricia into the chair.
No.
What can you be talking about?
The cold sore of my shingles is returning.
Okay.
You don't believe in sharing?
Oh, I sure do.
And then if under departments, I think Lisa has something.
Do you want, for the agenda on Wednesday or just?
No.
No, just for today.
Oh, okay. Anything else for the agenda tomorrow? I do feel like there's something missing, but I can't put a finger on it.
Well, let's look at last January's agenda, we'll find out.
Yeah.
We might have to go back a year and take a look.
And then, so for the next meeting, we'll discuss the recreation.
Yeah.
Conservation.
Yep.
All right. Department updates. Lisa.
It's not really an update, it's a question. Currently, our capital purchases that are budgeted are going through fiscal to be approved and then going to the commissioners. We were looking at the capital purchases and we have details of what were approved in the budget, and we were wondering if we could just approve those capital purchases that are budgeted and just have them go through fiscal instead of you guys
I love that.
Yeah.
filling out all the things to do.
That's perfect.
And then anything that's not budgeted would go through us and then go through you,
Like,
like normal.
that sounds
Because
wonderful.
in code, we put a list of every capital item for each department that had capital purchases, so we know exactly what they wanted and how much they
Which is very
budgeted.
important and quite an improvement, thank you.
So
And
this would be up to such and such threshold kind of approval.
Well, would be the fact that we budgeted already.
Well, the
We
only,
need
the
to,
thing is I agree with all of that. My only question is just to make sure that whatever the legal process is and what the policy is, that will change, because this is the conversation we had like the beginning of the last term about who signs for what and stuff. And I just want to make sure that there's nothing in the code that states that we need to sign off on stuff specifically, or I mean, I may be wrong about that.
I would assume we can still do like we do with the check registers, actually, so check registers are more like that.
so that actually breaks out all the capital purchases, and there would be a list of those capital purchases.
So if it's already in there, then we're approving it in a sense.
Yeah. Well, I don't, like, again, I'm fine with all that, I trust you guys, it has nothing to do with it, it's just more of, I just wanna make sure that it's done, like, however we're supposed to do it legally. My other thing is, and I'll just say this like long-term, is the reason it is the way it is now is because at one point, I'm pretty sure it was the other way, and it got messed up. And so that's why they have we're signing off on everything before it goes anywhere kind of a thing. So, you know, I'm just throwing that out there too. I mean, it's great when you have really great people that you like and you're working with, but like hypothetically, 10 years from now, there's a whole different.
Well, I think part of the problem in the past was we didn't do a great job of letting departments know, yea or nay, we did in fact approve this as part of the capital budget. Now that we have a process in place that's pretty sure, I'm less concerned about that, whereas I can see why that'd be a major problem. Because we did have departments come in and say, oh, well, I mentioned it in the budget hearing, therefore it was approved.
Yeah, well, I think before the idea was to have a little string that ran back to it, so that if halfway through the year you want to.
Well, that too.
But we really do need to keep that in mind as well, you know.
But remember, the other thing, you're absolutely right about that, but that was before we added contingency, like pre-2000.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm fine with everything. I think they do a great job. I'm just saying, like, you know, a lot of times when you look at something, you go, why is this way? It doesn't make any sense. But then when you know what happened 15 years ago, you go, oh, that's why.
We wouldn't be able to do it if we didn't have great lists and have them accessible immediately.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
The other thing that this reminds me of, which we have not done in a long time, is passed a resolution authorizing certain accounts and vendors to be just automatically approved. So, I mean, I know we did it years ago, but it's probably time to review, make sure that in addition to, let's say, you know, Penelec, we also have REA on there for electric as well, that sort of thing. So just getting an updated resolution at some point in the next couple of months would be good.
Do we shop utilities at all?
Oh, yeah. All right, anything else, department updates? Okay. Commissioner schedule, I'm going to be working out of Innovault for half the day on Wednesday, and I will be doing county work in the Erie Department of Public Safety on Friday, so I'll be out Friday. General discussion. Okay. I know that there is an executive session that's needed, and it is in part to talk about settlement agreements.
Yep.
Related to tax appeals and